Hello and welcome to Pest in Class, expert voices in pest management. Today we speak with Ellen Rohr, the brand and industry marketing lead at ServiceTitan and an owner and founder of Zoom Drain franchise. We discuss the importance of financial literacy, the 5 steps to becoming a first-class financial manager, and how confidence can change everything. If you're an owner, you're going to want to listen to this episode. I'm your host, Amanda Salvatore. Let's get into it. Ellen Rohr, you are the brand and industry marketing lead at ServiceTitan and an owner and founder of Zoom Drain franchise, plus the author of several books, including Where Did the Money Go and How Much Should I Charge? And today we are going to be discussing the 5 steps to becoming a first-class financial manager for your business. Thank you so much for coming onto the show. I'm so excited to have you here.
And I love talking about money. Thank you for inviting me. And we're already best friends. So we're just going to continue the conversation that we've started. We love tradespeople. We love for them to make money. And here we are.
Yeah, I think that even though I know you're in the trade and this podcast focuses on the pest control industry, these are lessons for any business who are providing services like this. It's incredible. Yes. I'm really excited to get into it with you today.
Well, I married a plumber once upon a time. That's how I got introduced to the trades. And I loves me a dirty job, and pest control is a dirty job. So why do I love it? People who do this work are willing to go in where other people are running away. So thank you for that. Thank you for your service. And when you're willing to do that, I think you deserve to make a really great living. I love plumbing, heating, cooling, electrical. I'm a drain cleaning franchise. And I just love the people who work in these businesses. So shout out to the pest control team. Can I start by telling my story about Pest Pros?
I would love to, but I have this icebreaker that I just love to lob over to you.
You have an icebreaker. Okay, I'll get to my story. I'll tease that.
I am.
Okay.
I'm excited for it.
Okay. All right.
I'm also excited to kind of find out. I know we always start the podcast with one of these little icebreakers, get to know you, if you will. Though I think by the end of this episode, we're going to know a lot about you. Something a little fun to kick off. What is the most underrated part of a ski day? I know you're a skier, and I am not, so I don't know much about it at all. So I'd love to hear what the most underrated part is for you.
It's so funny because I grew up skiing, but I was always scared. I remember being on a chairlift once when I was like a teenager, watching these kids ski beneath me, and they're hooting and hollering, and I'm like, I'm not having any fun. I am scared to death all day long. And I'd been skiing my whole life, but I was never really proficient at it. So I graduated from college, and to the disappointment of my parents, who spent a lot of money on that education, I said, I'm going to go be a ski bum. And I moved to Vermont, and I had these ski racer boyfriends and my girlfriends, and we figured out how to ski. And then I was a professional skier. I was a ski patroller and a ski instructor. My girlfriend from Vermont just became a ski instructor again. Now we're 65 years old. How cool is this? So she's going to be a ski instructor at Snow Basin. And one of the really cool things about skiing for me is dissecting the mechanics of skiing, the G forces, what happens with gravity and snow and angulation and the equipment. If that isn't the nerdiest thing you've ever heard, or that you've heard today, at least. But for those of you who like the trades because of the tools and the equipment and the technique, I feel that way about skiing.
This all tracks. Knowing Ellen as I do, she loves really knowing the ins and outs of everything. So I am not surprised whatsoever that that's what you'd be into.
It's kind of the underrated part because everybody gets the mountains, the snow, the wind in your face and all of that stuff. But the mechanics of it and the dynamics of it, I find endlessly fascinating. So if you want to talk skiing with me, we can do it. But I'm also a snob about who I ski with. I've been I don't ski with anybody. You have to be good. Just saying.
Oh, I will meet you for a hot cocoa by the fire. All right.
We can do that.
All right. So let's get into it. How did you find yourself in the trades? Because your story really goes hand in hand with what we're talking about today.
Yes. I married a guy named Hot Rod. So there, I said, what's your name? He said, Hot Rod. And I'm like, that one.
Done.
So we got married and he was a plumber. And I thought that was a selling feature. I thought plumbers made a lot of money. Now I grew up with a dad, a family who was not handy. Like we did not fix it ourselves. We called people. And I really never gave it a thought when we called someone, because the toilet wouldn't flush or the lights wouldn't turn on. I just thought these were miracles that people came and did. I didn't even think about it until I married Hot Rod and I started to hang out with him and his cool friends and go on jobs. And it starting right then, I was just gobsmacked by how cool it was. To watch a house go up and see the drains and vents and then the electrical and the mechanical and how they all work together and fit together to create a home with weather and running water and power. Right out of the gate, I was really awed by this. And I don't know how to do any of it. I just appreciate it. And that's not a just. I appreciate it. Capital A. What I love about my husband is what I love about trade people in general. So then, my husband had a partner. They had a little plumbing company in Park City, Utah. And I had a million jobs. But at this point in my life, I'm starting to I had a baby. That'll do it to you. I had a baby. And that's what made me think, I got to be responsible. So I became a restaurant manager. It was the one real job I had. I've had a million surreal jobs, but I've got a paycheck and vacation and people to cover for me. And I've got quite a bright career in my own right. But then my husband's partner died. They were 33 years old. Hot Rod's very laid back. His best friend since he was 8 years old, a fellow named Richard Yox was not so laid back, and he was someone who would really stress about work. In fact, the last words Yox said to me were, if I don't do it myself, this will never get done. He had a rough week. He worked about 100 hours that week, and then he went to the hospital because he didn't feel well, and then the next day he died. I bring this up. I know it's kind of a sunny way to start our podcast. However, it's not worth it to sacrifice your health. And so many of us do. If you've ever missed the gym or you're eating terrible food or whatever because of the business or you're sacrificing relationships, it's not supposed to be like that. And I'm not judging, just pay attention as we travel together today, because there may be some ways to do things differently that might be healthier for you and better for your family. Because in any event, nobody wanted to lose Yox. And it was
That's
interesting.
Such a shame.
It was. And stuff got done. Yeah. We are important, but we're not necessary, is what that experience taught me. We're important, but not necessary. And life went on without Yox. But then I did a really dumb thing, one of many in my career. And I said to Hot Rod, I'm going to quit my real job. I'm going to work with you. You turn wrenches. I'll count money. We'll get rich. I had some business experience. I thought we're good to go. HOTTOGO. We were ready.
I don't mind inviting Chapel Roan into the room at all. I'm here for it.
Always. She's right there. Anyway, it was not great. It was awful because we didn't have enough money. The books were a mess. Yox had been in charge of the books. He didn't know what he was doing. I didn't know what I was doing. So we don't have any money. And I would say things to Hot Rod like, we don't have enough money, but he would hear, I'm not working hard enough. I'm not good enough. And if you can relate to that, I can relate to you, because it was really tough in the early days. And I think when you start a business, you do so because you want to have financial freedom. You want to be able to be your own boss and all of that. That was not my experience. And it probably isn't yours if you're just starting out. It gets better. And that's really why I'm here today. You can press on, you can make some changes, and life can get better for you. And I like to be helpful because people were so helpful to me. So what happened is, back in the day, I found a magazine, and there's an article by a fellow named Frank Blau, who's close to 100 years old right now, Frank. And he wrote a column called How Much Should a Contractor Charge? And I read the column, and I follow the math. And I write him a letter. Now, today we have podcasts. We have like this, or, online, you can chat GPT, how to grow a business. You're going to get some good information. But back in the day, we had trade magazines, and trade magazines are still very relevant. Smart people write articles and tell you how they did it. So that's what happened to me. So I write Frank a letter telling him, I followed the math, but none of what you say will work for me, because you don't understand my cheap customers and my guys who won't do anything we want them to do and whine. And Frank calls me. The guy who wrote the column gets my stupid letter and calls me and he says, honey, you have your head so far up and then he describes where I have my head.
Charming.
I end up hanging up on him, totally offended. And then the next day called him back like completely broken and humbled and just like, I don't know what I'm doing and please help me. And he did. And I wrote this letter, please help me, but you don't understand me or my business or you don't know what you're talking about. I write this letter. He actually published a book called The Business of Contracting with my letter in it as an example of how stupid contractors can be. That's Frank. How about that?
Wow. He knows,
So that was the first time I was published. But then I got better because what he taught me was how to read and use financial reports, balance sheet, profit and loss. I am the least likely person on the planet to want to do things like that. I'm old and back in the day, they didn't call you or diagnose you as dyslexic, but I do not see columns and numbers very well. And I've always struggled with that. A spreadsheet is like a lot of work. I don't love numbers. I'm not a naturally persnickety person, detail-oriented person. But what happened with me is that we were broke and somebody had to fix it. And I was the only one I could afford to do it. And so I remember to this day, the moment I just went, like big sigh. Okay, I will figure this out. Martyr, resentful. I'm going to figure it out. And it took me about a year to get clear on what a balance sheet was, what a profit and loss was, how to use the accounting system, debits and credits, what each account taught me. And most of that year was spent trying not to learn it. Once I just said, okay, that was like a month. It was like a month of study and work to clean up my books.
Let me just summarize what we were talking about.
Yeah, because that was like 30 years. No, it was like 3 years worth.
So you have this business and you've reached your wit's end. You're going to go into bankruptcy. You have your last resort and you stumble upon this article.
Yeah.
And you ask for help, which is so difficult to do. You find this mentor and you start becoming financially literate. And still, it was difficult going through that process and really kind of breaking down that wall. What do you think gave you that hesitance? It sounds like throughout this whole story, you're like, it's not going to work for me. You don't understand the people that I am dealing with. And even once you had that mentorship, there was still a little bit of that resistance. So what was that?
It's not the math that's so hard. It's all the stuff that's going on between your ears that really trips you up with literally anything. And money is so emotionally charged. Okay, so going to school, once upon a time, I learned things in college, like you have to charge what the market will bear. And there's something called the going rate. I don't know why in college they didn't just teach me what Frank taught me, which is to add up your costs of doing business, divide by the number of widgets you sell and charge more than that. There was this big disconnect there. Or there's all this metaphysical stuff, which I'm totally into, like do what you love and the money will follow. Just no,
Sure.
Just like do what you love. Yes. And you could figure out the money, which is connected and yet separate thing. But there's all this stuff that's in your head. I grew up in a family that did not discuss money. It was considered bad form, impolite. I never knew anything about our family finances. So I think I was dealing with a lot of that, and I really just didn't want to. I'm a creative person. I don't have a very long attention span. I wanted somebody else to do it for me. So I had to work through that stuff. But there's a great expression that says, when the pain of the current condition becomes greater than the fear of change, you'll change. And I had nothing to lose to raise our prices. And in fact, once I do the math, I remember this too. I have a 10 key. I've got a little calculator. We have computers now, green columnar pad, and I'm putting together a little budget and I add up my cost of doing business and follow the math, divide by the number of billable hours we could possibly sell. By the way, it's exactly how I still coach people on creating a selling price in the book. How much should I charge? It's sound way to come up with a selling price. And when I did that, I was charging, because I'd called my competitors, I was charging 1/5 of what it really cost us to be in business. So I had to quintuple my prices, and I was sure no one would call. That's impossible. That's why I was like, I had outthunk this. Smarts are great, but not necessary, and often an impediment to success. The smartest people are not the ones who are the most successful. So often someone who's smart will go too far down the chessboard and figure that this is impossible and not do it. And I know a lot of guys who just like head down, go to work and make a lot of money. So I was outthinking this, and I knew that if we raised our prices, no one would call us. So I was ready for that. I was ready to prove Frank wrong. I was ready to go get me another job. I didn't want anything to do with this. And so kind of in a last-ditch effort, we raised our prices and just started to make more money. Hey, if we have time, we could put this on the end. I got a little story about the day we raised our prices, which is
Sure.
most of the time when you raise your prices, the advice I'm going to give you is no one will notice. It's not that big a deal. Your customers don't want to pay you anything. They don't want to call a pest control company ever. There's not money set aside for you, any of it. But my first day at higher prices is the worst day I've ever heard anyone tell. So I'm going to save that as a little teaser.
I love it. This is something that we had discussed before when we chatted about what we were going to talk about today.
Okay.
And it's about confidence. It really sounds to me like a lack of confidence, because no one's going to want to pay me that money. No one's going to want to be charged that. And it seems like the doubt was really taking over and affecting your business ultimately. We also discussed the confidence within the trades and in pest control and the lack of confidence very often in this industry. Can you go into that a little bit?
From my perspective, I had this tremendous opinion of my husband and other tradespeople in terms of what they could do, because I wasn't one. What I noticed then and to this day is that going into the trades very often is associated with not being good enough to go into white collar world. In other words, a friend of mine, Matt Smith, used to say, are you going to wear a patch? Or are you going to wear a tie? And in high school, as you're making those choices, do I want to go to college or do I want to learn a skill? The skill is usually not associated with as much cachet, or what's the word I'm looking for? Like, it's a better choice to go to college and to get a job like that.
Yes, I think even when talking with pest control owners, every story starts with, I didn't think I was going to be doing this. This is not where I thought I would be working. If you asked me as a kid, that's not the job I would have picked, right? And I think it comes from these negative ideas about these industries, which we're definitely trying to break. I think that in the trades, confidence is rising, especially post-COVID, seeing how essential the work actually is and how important and how much knowledge that they hold. You have so much power from the knowledge that you have. There's so many people who don't know how to put these lights in, how to clean a drain, how to take care of an infestation that's affecting their family. It's such important work. So I'm glad that we're kind of talking about this confidence, because you should have confidence in the knowledge that you have and the services that you provide.
And confidence comes from winning, from being successful. It's not just a pep talk. It can help to talk about why the trades are so essential, so important. So one of the things that I've started doing with drain cleaning apprentices or kids who come to our Zoom drain, and now they're drain cleaners. So I will ask them, so when you told your mom you were going to be a drain cleaner, was she happy about that? Nope. Okay, I've got some ideas for you. You could share this with your mom. So there is no one more important than the drain cleaner to promote the survivability of mankind on the planet, because sanitation without proper sanitation, people are at risk. You prevent more diseases than doctors will ever cure. 70% of the world has inadequate sanitation. 30% of the world poops on the ground, and they are at risk of dying because of the diseases that are born from that inadequate sanitation. So what you do is important, and you can make a lot of money doing it. And you get to use all these cool tools, and you can work autonomously by yourself, and you're going to be paid to learn a skill that you could perform anywhere in the world doing this essential, important work. So maybe your mama needs to hear that. We can start having these conversations about how important, I mean, like you said, the word infestation just made my skin crawl. Yeah. And even as drain cleaners, if we pull back a wall and it's like covered with sewer flies, like, we call the pest control people. There are so many opportunities in pest control because you're willing to do work that other people don't know how and can't do. And it's so important that it gets done. This is all part of it. As we started to make more money, we got out of debt. Within a year, we had stockpiled as much as we had been upside down in debt. It did not take long to turn our company around. And that's where I kind of got like born again with this business stuff. Like, oh, if I don't know it, how many other people don't know it? How many people like me are out there, mom pop shops or family businesses that are just struggling doing this excellent work, but not charging enough, not making a good living, having a real life associated with a business of their own. So that really set me on my path. And that was like 40 years ago.
And here we are today on Pest in Class.
Yeah. And I'm so happy to be here.
We're so happy to have you. I want to dive into the 5 steps of becoming a first-class financial manager. I think that this is an incredible place to start when you're trying to learn about financial literacy.
And, I worked on this, because I get asked this question a lot. Okay, yeah, I relate to your story, Ellen. So what should I do? So we're going to get really practical here. I like to, I love philosophy, but I also want to give you some tactics. The first step to becoming a first-rate financial manager is understanding the why of your business. I love Simon Sinek. If you've ever heard him speak or read his book, Start With Why, I love him. And it's all about, creating that purpose in your life and in your business. In your business, there is only one why for the business. Now, you as a person may have all sorts of reasons for being, a mission, a purpose, values, all of that cause you to get out of bed in the morning and to provide for your family, for your teammates, for your community. The business itself exists to increase in enterprise value. In other words, the only reason to have a business is to generate money, to manufacture money, sales, profits, cash. Those are the main KPIs. Now, what can happen is sometimes, and Hot Rod is like this, sometimes the technician who becomes a business owner really doesn't like or want the business. And that's a choice. You don't have to do this. So really what happened is Hot Rod and I started to make money, and we could have 8 trucks, 12 trucks, let's go. Hot Rod says to me, I don't want to do any of this. I like working all by myself. I don't like being an employer. I don't like all of the trappings of being a business owner. I'm a technician, and that's what works for me. And my husband is probably the most self-actualized guy I know. But I wanted to see what I could do in the world of business. I got bit by the bug. Oh, Pest in Class.
There you go. She's signing in.
There she goes. I got bit by this bug. Like, I wonder if I could run a bigger company. I was starting to get it, and it was really turning me on. But for those of you in a family business, a couple things here. Understand that the business exists to increase in value. Your responsibility as a business owner is to make money. That's how the business continues to support you and your team members and your community. If it doesn't make money, if you go upside down, if you go out of business, you're doing it wrong. You don't have to be in business. You could abandon it. You could sell it. You could gift it, or you could fix it, but you don't have to do it. And if you do it, you're assuming, now this is step 2, you're assuming stewardship. Your job as the owner is to be the financial manager. And to be a good steward, I can't think of another word that works as well, that it's your responsibility not your bookkeepers or your accountants or whatever. Like, sometimes you find good ones. Sometimes you have to kiss a few frogs. You're going to need help becoming a good financial manager, a good CPA, a bookkeeper who can help you, a great CRM like Field Routes or ServiceTitan or whatever you're using. You need these tools to help you, but overall, it's your job to know where the money is, where it comes from, where it goes, and how to make more of it. So step one is understand this is a business, and the why of any business is to increase in enterprise value. And then step two, assume stewardship. It's your job.
Yeah. Ownership, right? Ownership, knowing
Ownership.
It's like you said, you could drag your feet a little bit, but it's important.
You could drag your feet and be willing to deal with all the head stuff that, listen to podcasts, get therapy, talk to other business owners, if you really want to. And if you don't want to, go work for another company or work all by yourself. There are lots of ways to play. I've been to seminars where the message really comes out down like, you've got to grow because blah, 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 blah. You really can do whatever you want in life. And that's a good thing to remember. You're the boss of you. The business itself needs to increase in value. You're going to assume stewardship if this is the game you want to play. And that leads us to step three. So step three is to get thee to KFP. And KFP stands for known financial position. That means that you can run out of your accounting software, QuickBooks or Intact, a balance sheet and a profit and loss. Once a week is a good standard. And that the numbers are current, up to date, they're accurate, and that you understand them. Every line, cash, accounts receivable, inventory. How does the money get in there? What does that dollar amount represent? How do we know that it's right? That journey to auditing and verifying and clarifying your assets, liabilities, equity, that's the balance sheet, your sales expenses, and then profit.
Fingers crossed.
That's a profit and loss. That's your job. Yeah. That's your job. And that's a project. It's like the back of the truck. If you have never cleaned up your financials, they will not be tidy. Just 100. It's like the back of the truck. If you haven't been paying attention to the back of your van, you're not going to open it and go, oh, looks great. Everything's in its place. It's all labeled, organized. I know what everything is, know how much is in there. No, that's a path, and it's a very similar journey to get to a known financial position.
Yeah, it sounds like setting yourself up for success and just understanding the financials. I mean, you just setting yourself up. And then once you have that all figured out, I'm sure it's just easier to be able to plug it in. And once you understand it, it's not so scary anymore. And you just go with it. You're not building from the ground up every time.
In fact, you never have to clean it up again. You could just maintain it, just like the back of the truck. Now, you might drift and have to do a cleanup day and that kind of thing. But once you get clear on what the balance sheet and the profit and loss are, by the way, I love helping you so much. At ellenrohr.com, I give away the book, Where Did the Money Go?, which teaches you what a balance sheet is, what a profit and loss is. I would have given my right arm for that book. That's why I wrote it. It's skinny with pictures. It's...
Say more.
It's an easy, say less. I just wrote it because that's what I would have needed. I would have loved that book when I was trying to figure this out. And so that's why I wrote it. And now I just give it away. So go Ellen Rohr, ELLENROHR.com. And there it is. As you do that, here's just some encouragement. First off, as a pest control professional, you're already doing more complicated math than there is in the balance sheet and profit and loss. You've got to figure out volume and chemicals and equipment and mechanics. There's just a lot going on there. Like, it's not that you're not smart enough to figure out the balance sheet and profit and loss, more that it's the emotional stuff that could get in your way. Also, that you just don't understand the language. It's like if everyone was speaking Spanish and you don't speak Spanish, you feel stupid. You're not stupid, but you don't understand the words. And the words are weird in accounting, right? Like, it's called a profit and loss. It's never a profit and loss. It's a profit or loss. And a profit and loss, it's called profit and loss in QuickBooks, but at the bottom, it doesn't say profit. It says net income. Why? It's kind of like this is called an elbow or a 90 or an L. Is that going the right way? Okay. Yeah. And it's the same thing. It's a piece of pipe that takes that right turn, but it is confusing if you've been taught that that's an L and now your coworker calls it an elbow and you're like, wait, what? So those are the things, like, to ask questions. I think what gave me confidence, I just kept asking questions until I could understand in real people terms what those words meant. There's also a glossary in my book because of that.
Oh, that's helpful.
It's so helpful, to just like, here's some ideas for what those words mean, but to keep asking, that's how you get to a known financial position. But once you do, again, on the encouragement, if you like to play sports, for instance, I love ski racing. And in ski racing, they keep score. It's the fastest one down without missing any gates. It's the fastest one down who wins. Now, if they didn't have a timer, I would suspect you would not enjoy that sport so much as a spectator or as a participant. Like, they wouldn't even play if you didn't keep score. And so keeping score, the overall scoreboards for the company are the balance sheet and the profit and loss. And once you did, what happened to me is like, wow, we could change our behavior, raise our prices, and see the impact on the profit and loss and the balance sheet. And it got very seductive. Like, oh, let's do more good things and less bad things.
I'm sure once you see it working, I can't imagine the buzz you must get from that, seeing the money come in and understanding it. And it just having one of those moments where, you have all the math coming out of your brain, like in a movie where you have all these flashes of like cracking the code.
Yeah.
Finding the formula, right? So I would love to know what step 4 is. What's the next step in this process?
Okay, so I'm going to set the stage and I'm going to see if you can guess what it is. All right, so here you are. Here I am in my office. I'm on the phone with Frank Blau. I'm sitting side by side with my accountant. Bit by bit, I'm figuring it out. Like today, you would look at YouTube videos. You'd find the blue collar nerd out there. He's helpful. QuickBooks has a whole bunch of training videos on YouTube. So you'd learn it. And as I was learning it, I realized I had to raise my prices. Now, who do I have to sell on raising my prices?
Your customers. Yes.
Not yet.
Oh, your employees?
Yeah.
Oh, all right.
Okay. So until they get it, they don't know we're not making any money. We're the owners. They assume we're rolling in the dough. Or I don't know, that was actually true, but it's not their job at that point. They're out there fixing things. And what had never been their job to know where the money comes from, where it goes, and how we can make more of it. But what I also knew is we weren't paying them well enough. We didn't have nice enough benefits. We were scrimping all the time. I was sweating over payroll. That's stressful. Nobody wants to work for a company like this, not for the long haul. And you have to sell yourself first. I had to sell Hot Rod on this. We raise our prices, man. I think we're going to go out of business. Are you game? He's like, yes. Okay. If we're going to do this, we have to sell our team. So I showed the team the numbers. Now, my daddy told me you would never do that. You would never invite your team members to look at your balance sheet, your profit and loss, your checkbook, any of that. I just didn't know how to communicate to them why we had to raise our prices unless I did. I was like fresh out of ideas. This is how I came up with it. This is the math I did. This is why I think we have to raise our prices. I know we have to raise our prices. So a couple of things. That step 4 is to get your team in on it. And you do that by sharing real financial information. Now, someone out there might have just pooped their pants at that.
It's very vulnerable. I can imagine there would be some hesitance, especially if it's not going in your favor. To be able to bring that to your team and come with a new plan, I can imagine it's really nerve-wracking.
It's nerve-wracking. It makes you feel really vulnerable. And I'm feeling the feels about it right now. You don't have to show them everything, but I'm going to give you a great book, a book that changed my life. Right about this time, I met a guy through the pages of a book. It's Jack Stack, The Great Game of Business. And he tells the story of how he walked this path. He has a remanufacturing company. And would you know, I met him in the book like 35 years ago. I pursued him until he became my friend. And I was just with him last week.
Oh,
Is that cool? We went to a field trip at one of his shops. He's just been one of my heroes this whole time. Right now they have like 15 businesses, all of them employee owned to some degree. Now you don't have to do that either, not right yet, but it's kind of the inevitable path is that if you get your team in on the game, they're going to want a stake in the outcome. That's why that's the second book. But don't go too fast. Like, I'm not encouraging you to give stock in your company. Certainly not until you've gone through these other steps. Get to a known financial position, get your team in on the game, and then maybe you build your company to a point where you could start sharing meaningful bonuses or profit sharing or some kind of ownership. I feel like this is a scary moment, so don't go too far down the chessboard on this. The Great Game of Business will give you a really good overview of what open book management can look like and why you would do it and how to do it. There's gradients. You don't have to show them everything, but you might show them the truth about a relevant number that measures whether or not they're performing. So open book management is what I was doing. I just didn't have a name for it. But I started to share this financial information with my team. And at the very least, if you tell the truth, you build trust. Share the information that is essential for them to do their job. If someone's selling, they should know their sales score, their closing rate, their average ticket. That might be enough to get them started with a little scorecard. You don't have to share everything right now. I did, and the sky did not fall. And I know a lot of people who have, but again, just ease into it. If you're an installer, it would be nice to know how that job was bid, how many hours were put in, and tell them the truth. And when you do this, what I found, this is so delicious, is your team will fix everything if you just let them in on it.
I think when you open up to your team, they respond in a positive way. I think that if they do see numbers that they're pulling in as well, it becomes almost like a healthy competition, or like, how can I help? What am I doing? And there is an incentive.
And sometimes the incentive is just doing the right thing, feeling like you're part of the solution, having meaningful, relevant activities throughout your work life. Yes, money helps, but till you get out of a hole, be careful here to give away money you don't have yet. But your team will help fix everything if you honor them by bringing them into it. So get your team in on the game is the fourth step to becoming a financial master, because they're the ones who are making all the decisions. Your frontline team are the ones most responsible for sales, and also for your main expenses, your cost of goods sold, labor, materials, and subs. And if you can, and this is on the profit and loss, so sales minus cost of goods sold equals gross profit, gross margin. That's a good number to know, because if you get out of a job with that much, then what's left over pays overhead and leaves profit. See, now they can help you play that game to win. Some expenses they don't have control over, but sales, the income sales they do, and the expenses of labor, material, and subs they do, you can start playing really rewarding games, and mentally rewarding, spiritually rewarding games when you get your team in on. And what I have found over and over again is your team will help you fix everything if you just let them in on it. And that requires some vulnerability. It requires shedding the stuff that you might have learned from your parents, like I did, that you would never, share this information. And so that leads me to my story. And then I'll leave you with the one last thing of the 5
I love
steps.
it. I think that's brilliant.
Is that
Let's
good?
do it. Let's go into it. Yeah,
I
want to hear this story really bad. So I was going to make time for it regardless.
Yeah.
Let's get into it.
Well, you'll love this, I think. What happened is, so we raise our prices, and this is like 1990. I mean, it's going back. And it took me a minute to get this far. I didn't Frank told me to raise my prices, and I did. Although I have had people in my life just do it that fast and quit all the drama that I created. They avoided, and it was delicious. But it took me a minute. And so I raise our prices, and we come up with this little price sheet. I did it on my Selectric. I typed it for about a dozen common repairs. And we sent our 3 guys out on a service call. So I give them like, their marching orders, and I give them this like piece of paper, and they're like looking at it and, oh man, how's this going to go? And I'm like, good luck to you. And they go out into the world, and I'm, at home just like, oh, please let them come back in one piece. This is what happened on this first day. The first call ended with the customer kicking our tech out of his house and calling the Better Business Bureau. That was one. I'm not making this up.
That's brutal.
It's brutal. And it won't be this bad for you. This is the worst it's ever been. The second one, the customer called the Attorney General of the state of Utah about our exorbitant prices and how, wrong this was and blah, blah, blah. But the third one, my babysitter calls because she'd had a plumbing problem, and we sent our tech over to her. My kid is at her place, and she's sobbing on the phone about how could we possibly rip her off. And she's the one I didn't even charge the new prices to, like, give her a break. It's my babysitter, the whole bit. That I get. That was the worst of them. So then the guys come stumbling home, bleeding from all points, and I'm like looking at them like, oh, that was bad. And they take off. This is a Friday. And all over the weekend, Hot Rod and I are talking about, we're going to shut this down. It didn't work. See, it didn't work. And we're making plans. I'm feeling like 1 foot out the door, light as a feather. We go to work on Monday, ready to talk to the guys and just go, obviously, this is a big mistake and we're not going to do it. And our guys had, like you do, a meeting after the meeting on Friday. And they came in Monday and said, we get what you're doing. We get it. You want to make some money? Hot Rod deserves more. We deserve more. We got this. And that was the end of the issues. They got it. I didn't see that coming. And that's why sharing the journey with them was helpful. But your team has your back. And that's what I found. Now, that's a really great end to that story. Probably you won't have the customer challenges that I had to clean up. But that's when we just started to make more money. The guy said, we can do this. We'll figure it out. We deserve it. You deserve it. Let's go. And again, they're really the ones that turn the company around, which leads us to the fifth step. That was a fourth step. Understand the why of the business and increase enterprise value. Assume your stewardship. Get to a known financial position, bring your team in on the game. And then the last one is make it a project. This won't happen overnight. Projects are the mundane work of leadership development, getting stuff done. That's how leadership, there's a lot of highfalutin talk about leadership, all of it good, most of it good. The grassroots leadership development comes from project management. Now, if you're on EOS or you've been reading Traction, love it. And a lot of people know about it. It's a great way to impose order, make it formal. My friend Al Levy wrote a book called 7 Power Contractor. You can go to 7powercontractor.com. Al Levy wrote a book, and in this book, he's got like 3 pages of how to get projects done, and they're gold. You don't have to make it too fancy. You make lists, you prioritize, you assign, you go through the questions. What are we doing? Why are we doing it? How much can we spend? Time, energy, money? Who's going to be in charge? When does it need to be done? And how should we tackle this? And you just try stuff and you take responsibility for the project. And maybe it's a new price book. Maybe it's sales training. Maybe it's finishing up that KFP, really nailing down the financials. Maybe it's cleaning up the back of the truck. You're going to do things that now will have a positive impact on sales or efficiency, on managing expenses, on growing sales. And that's how you play.
Yes. I love this idea of a project. I think everyone, when you say project, everyone knows what you're talking about. These lists, the delegation that comes with it, the research that comes with it. And it makes it a little less scary.
Yeah, like somebody explained it to me once, like a to-do is to call your mother. A project is to throw your mother a birthday party.
That's brilliant.
Isn't that
I'm keeping that one in my back pocket forever.
So when you say to someone, oh, we're going to raise our prices, that's not a to-do. That's a project.
Yes.
Okay. So we got to do some math. We got to do the budget. We got to add up our costs. Should we use PriceBook Pro? Should we, type one up? Should we buy one that someone else did? What tasks are involved? Like, it's a project and it's going to have some moving parts. Actually, a project is just like a clump of to-dos. So you make lists and organize them and prioritize them, and you just don't stop. Paul Kelly, who is the CEO of Parker & Sons, I love him so much. He wrote a book called Ta-da! It's great.
That's a brilliant title.
And he says you can solve any problem if you meet about it often enough with the right people. Now, that's brutal because everybody complains about meetings, but it's because most meetings are terrible. However, if the meeting is focused on, this is the price book meeting, we have the right people there, we start and stop on time, we go through the steps of delegation, and we focus on the hows, we make assignments, and off you go. And we do this again, and again till it's done, you get stuff done. So becoming a financial master, make these components a project. And the main project here is to get to a known financial position. So put that on your top projects list.
Oh my gosh.
I must say we had a very nice choreography in this podcast. I like the way this came together.
Thank you. I do too. We had lists, we had stories, we talked about skiing. I mean, like, we really hit it all.
We had elements of foreshadowing.
Yes, I mean, really. As somebody who formerly was in entertainment, it's very satisfying when it all kind of comes together with very little effort. Ellen Rohr, I have to thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. I've never gotten to talk about something like this before. And I think that this is so important and exactly what our listeners want.
I think so.
I'm so grateful. Yes,
absolutely. Thanks for the soapbox. I love preaching about this, and we could do more. We can get more into, some of the details, because along the way, you're going to find other things like, how do I compensate my team? Or how do I create procedures that'll make me more efficient so that I have less, labor costs, et cetera. So you're going to run into some sub projects here, and I'm for it. So I love you too. This has been so much fun. Thanks,
I'm
Amanda.
so excited to have you back on. Ellen Rohr, thank you for coming on to Pest in Class. Thanks for listening to our second season of Pest in Class. Just wanted to let you know that we will have a brand new season coming out in a few weeks. So if you've missed any of our other 30 episodes, now is the time to catch up. Thanks for listening. And to make sure you get notified as soon as we're back, follow and subscribe to us on your favorite podcast platform. See you then.